Hello everybody, my name is Kyle Lee from kiloloco.com, and today we're going to be looking into using access control with custom frameworks, and we're going to be using Swift 3 for this. The video was really made just to go over access control, but you can't really fully understand what's going on unless you're using frameworks and how the access control works without using frameworks. So you kind of get two things. You're going to be learning two things throughout this video. You're going to learn how access control is used in Swift, and you're also going to learn how to kind of set up your own custom framework. Not going to be doing anything with it, but just kind of see how it works and how you can kind of start doing your own framework. So as you can see, the tools we're using are Xcode 8.2.1 and Swift 3.0. Skill level is intermediate. Obviously, you need to understand the basics of the language. You should also have kind of an understanding of classes, enums, structs, and protocols. You don't have to have a full in-depth understanding of it, but you're going to mainly be using access control when you use these, when you use things like these objects, pretty much. And then you also have to know what frameworks are. You don't have to know how to implement them or anything like that. I'm going to be going over that for you, but you have to know what they are to really understand what's going on. All right, so let's go ahead and minimize that. So we're going to go over to Xcode, start a new project. And that's the wrong one. So I'll go up here. All right, let's just start off with a single view application, and we'll call this access. You can call it whatever you want, obviously. Leave everything unchecked because we're not really going to be doing too much with it. And I'll go ahead and save this on my desktop. That's fine. All right. So let's go into the ViewController, because this is where I'm going to be showing you some of the examples of how access control works. And then also what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make a new file. And we can actually just call this access as well. Doesn't really matter what you call that file. It's not going to really do anything for us, but give us kind of some guidance. I'll just move it up here so that it's kind of in the same area as all the stuff that I'm going to be working with. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the different types of, I'm going to create 5 or 6 different classes, and they're not going to really do anything, but they're going to have all the different types of access control that a class can pretty much have. So let's and those are, you have open, and we'll make it a class, and we'll just call this open class. And like I said, it's not going to do anything right now, so let's just do that. And we'll do, the next one is public, and we'll just call this public class, and we're just going to keep all this as simple as possible for as long as possible until we actually have to do something. So next one will be internal. And actually internal classes are usually what's done by default. You don't have to do anything. They're usually, most of your classes are usually internal, and you don't have to explicitly state that they're internal. But just to double check that and prove this to you guys, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make another class, and this one's just going to be, we'll call this an implicit class. And that just means that the access control is implied. Next, we have file private, and we'll just call this, well, this has to be a class. We'll call this file private class. And then lastly, we have private class. Now I wanted to go over these because I didn't really understand what the hell they were. And you start seeing things like file private in areas whenever you get a framework into your project, and you start wondering, okay, well, it's working for me, but I don't really understand what this code is, and that's the whole entire idea of this video. So now we have each of these. What I'm going to actually do is I'm going to give each of them a function, and it's going to be the same exact function. And we're going to have a function called, do something. And this is going to be implicitly. And it's not really gonna do something, but we'll pretend like it is. And we're just gonna put this function in each of these classes because we want to be able to see exactly where the differences are, if any. And there are differences, so I don't know why I said if any, but whatever. You know what I mean, guys and gals and others. All right, so each of these can do something, right? So usually when you make a class, you just want to be able to have access to it and, you know, call a function and do something with it, right? So let's go over to our ViewController. We have these, we have our access, we have all of our access classes right here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to call these functions. So what we'll do, we're going to try to make instances of each of these classes. So let's do let open, or we'll do, what's a better way of naming these, because I know that once I get to the private, it's going to get kind of weird. So I'll just do my open instead. My open. Let my open equal open class. And we should be able to print that out so that we don't get any errors. All right, see how it's there? Or actually, we can do this. We can, since it does have a function in it, my open, and then we'll do something, right? Implicitly. And then next we'll do, what else did we have? My public. It's going to be a public class, and we're going to do my public dot do something. When I have the screen capture going, Xcode does not like to autofill, so I'm gonna copy that and just keep using it. So my public, next we have, what was it? I think it was internal, or yeah, it was in implicit. Let me double check. Internal class. Yeah, so let my internal equal internal class, and my internal is going to do something. Then we have my implicit going to be equal to implicit class, and we're going to make that do something as well. As you can see, I mean, I know this is kind of tedious, guys, but I'm only doing it to actually give you an understanding of what's actually going on, and so that you can get a full understanding of what's happening. So next we have my file private and my private to make correct. I mean, following this pattern, and we have access right here, so we would essentially do my file private class and my private class, right? But what we're going to see is that that doesn't work. So let my file private equal file private class, and you'll see that that's not going to work once Xcode catches up, and my private is going to equal private class. And it's going to take a while, so I'm just going to go ahead and build this so that we can get the errors to show. All right, as you can see, use of unresolved identifier file private class, use of unresolved identifier private class. So the reason why we can't see these is because of the access control. The access is pretty much restricting us from using these. So now you can see that there is a difference between how these classes are, you know, what level of access they're given. And a way that you could kind of think about this is that open access is kind of like Wikipedia, right? Because Wikipedia, you can put something out there and it's open and up there for the entire world to see. And not only can they see it, but they can manage it. So everyone can see and manage this object, right? Now public is a little bit different because even though it's up there for everybody to see, it's not the same. Public is more like Twitter, right? And public, it's everyone can see this, right? Everybody can see your tweets, the information that you put up there on Twitter, but they can't manage. Like they can't go in and edit your tweets to say something else, right? But everybody can see them. Now internal's a little bit more like, I would say, Instagram. And this is kind of a weird example because Twitter and Instagram, you know, you kind of probably think of them as being very similar. But Instagram, this would be like Instagram with private profile, right? So only specified people can see this, and they can't manage it either, right? They can't manage your post. They can't change what you posted, obviously, and that's going to be a recurring pattern throughout. Now implicit, like I said, is going to be it's usually internal, so I'm not going to put anything here because once again it doesn't have a explicitly stated access control. So we're going to skip down to file private. Now file private is more like your journal, like if you had a personal journal. And this is this would be like you can manage it. You can manage your journal, but others can't see it, and that's unless they actually have your journal, right? So well, obviously you can manage all of these, so others can't see it, unless it's right there on the page. I know my spelling's terrible and my typing's even worse, but yeah. So others can't see it unless it's like right there on the screen. So that would be right there on the page, and this would be like the page, right? And then private is like your deepest dark secrets, right? Now these would be only in your head, and no one can see these outside of the scope. So nobody can see private. So as you can see, it's getting more restricted as you go down. Open is the most broad, and everybody can use and everybody can see this. And then private, nobody can see it. It's a very specific case that you're actually going to be doing something with it, and then it doesn't extend past the scope of any of that. And I'll kind of go through and give you some of these examples, because I know putting it like this doesn't exactly solve anything, but we're going to go through and see that. Okay, so we know that these don't do anything, right? So let's go ahead and comment this out. Now I want to do the same thing with these, because we know that these work, right? and we want to see the first difference on some of the private access levels. Sorry about the kids, guys. All right, so we're going to create a function right here on the same screen inside the same page, right? So let's do, we're going to, let's just do access stuff, right? And this is just so that we can make instances of these. That's the only reason why I'm calling it a function. So we know that all this should work, right? If we can go outside of this file, then we should definitely be able to access all this stuff inside the file, which makes sense, right? That makes sense. So now let's try to do what we couldn't do in our ViewController, which was make my file private and my private available. And I'll just copy and paste these because I'm a pretty slow typer, guys, but whatever. And we'll scooch. What is going on with the Xcode? Hold on. Does not like this. Alright, we'll scooch those over and we'll uncomment them. And we'll scooch them over again. Alright, notice now we can actually use these. And the reason for that is because we're actually on the same file and it can see them right here. So it knows that they're in the same file, they're in the same page, and we can actually do stuff with it. So now if I do my file private, and I try to do something, I can do something. See? So it's pretty cool. And let's try to do the same thing on my private and do something, and we can see that we can do something, all because it's all right here in the same file, and you know, it's not really breaching the scope of anything. So that makes it really helpful for us. So now we want to look at how some of this stuff can be changed by, let me explain this a little bit. So we have implicitly stated functions inside or methods inside of our class, right? But now what happens if we have them explicitly stated? Well, okay, well, let's try that out. So open func, and we're gonna do something explicitly. All right. And we're just going to do that for each of these classes. Do something explicitly as public. We're going to internal. Do something explicitly. And this is also internal, so we'll also do something explicitly. File private. Do something explicitly. And private. Do something explicitly, right? So now, based off of what we learned, we should be able to do all this stuff in this class right here, right? So let's try it. Open. We should be able to do everything, do something explicitly for all of these, right? So let's go ahead and try it. All right, so we made it to what we pretty much expected. All the ones that we've been able to do everything with so far, we're able to do explicitly as well. And now we get down to the stuff that we were having problems with in the ViewController, and we're going to see if that works as well. All right, it looks like my file private worked and my private. Well, look at that. It auto-completed to do something implicitly. Well, we don't want that. We want to do something explicit. And you'll notice that we should get an error if Xcode ever wakes up. Okay, so now we got an error. And if you can actually see down here, if I'll actually pull it up on the side. Do something explicitly is inaccessible due to private protocol level. So even though that this is private and we can access it, it's kind of like file private on classes, that I can access it within the same file because it's all right here. But when I do something private inside the actual class, that means that it's private to this specific class. So now I don't have access to it outside of this class, outside of the class, like within the scope of this class and everything that we're going to be doing to set it up. Now, if I were to do something else, what I can do is, and what you might try is try to do file private func, and let's see what happens. Something else, and we'll see how this works. So we know that do something explicitly is not going to work. Do something else. Now we can do this, but most of the time this actually won't work in a in a real world situation. So you most likely won't have a file private and a private working like this, because you're probably not going to be doing your work on the same screen. If you are, then you can still access the do something else, but generally you can't have the access control exceed or give more access to the actual to your code pretty much. So generally, like if I put open in here, it doesn't mean that it's going to be open for everybody, and now I'm going to be able to go back to my ViewController and access it. Like this is still going to be hidden to me because it's still private. It's still stuck in that file and I still can't even access it. If Xcode ever wakes up, see, so I still can't access it. So that's one of the ways that I know I'm not doing a great job of explaining. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, it's pretty much limited to whatever class it's in, right? So we can do something else because the access is granted to us. It's we can, as long as it's file private and above, that means that we have access to it right here on this screen because we're in this access file and it can see it, that it's right here. But if we turn it back to private, then we no longer have access to it. And you can always restrict other things. Like let's say I wanted to do something explicitly and I want that thing up here in the open class and I want it to be private. Well, actually that'll still work, but because it's still in this class. But let me do the other one. Let me put it outside the ViewController so you can actually see it. So we know that this isn't going to work, and we're going to do my open dot do something explicitly. So right now this is going to work. I'm going to go ahead and build this. As soon as Xcode wants to wake up, there it goes. Build succeeded, as you can see. But if I go ahead and change this to something like file private, which is the lowest level of access that will cut it off from my ViewController, as we saw before, or even private. When we go back over here, we'll notice that, see, we no longer have access to it. It's going to give us an error, build failed, inaccessible due to file private protection level. So this is kind of how access control works. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, that might make sense. Maybe, hopefully, I explained it properly or well enough for you to kind of get a general understanding of it. But what about the rest of them? What about open, public, internal, and the implied one, right? Well, the thing with that is the second part of this tutorial, which is where you actually have to go through and make a framework to see how this is going to work. So let's go back over here and we're going to do a new, well, it's going to kick me out, but okay, let's do a new project. And this one, we're going to actually make it a framework. So go ahead and go to Cocoa Touch Framework. Make sure it's iOS because we're working in iOS. If you're trying to do this example on tvOS or watchOS, macOS, whatever, then it has to be that. But we're working with iOS, so make sure it's iOS Cocoa Touch Framework. And let's just call this external access. And do not put a space in your name for frameworks because it will mess up your code pretty much. All right, and I'm also going to just save this on the desktop. All right, so now we have external access, and what I want to do is, because we know that for sure, if file private and private can't even make it outside of this screen, we know for sure they're not going to work on an external framework. So all we really need to do is check what happens when we do open, public, internal, and the implied one. So let's do that. And we'll make a new file. And just like our other access one, we'll just call this external access. And it doesn't matter what you call it. Once again, this is just for an example. All right, so now we just want to do the same exact thing, right? But we have to kind of differentiate these, because when we put them into our access project, we want to be able to differentiate between them. So we'll just call this external. And we'll just put that in front of everything. Now, external open access, external public access, external internal access. Now we can already see that this already doesn't make sense, right? Because if it's internal, then how's it also going to be external? That doesn't really make sense. And then also, since classes are defaulted to internal access, that this probably won't work, because it's like saying external internal access, but implying that. So if you don't understand that, I'm going to go through and show it to you. But as you can probably see, you can probably tell that it's probably not going to work. Also, another thing that you have to do with frameworks is that you actually have to initialize them, but we'll get to that error when it comes up. All right, so now we have everything that we're probably going to be using. Let's go ahead and close this down, because we need access to it. Xcode needs access to it. And if two windows are open, like if your framework's open while you're trying to use it, it's not going to work. So what we're going to do is, sorry, I keep switching back and forth. We're going to go up here to the actual project name. We're going to do add files to our access project. We'll go to our external access project, and we'll actually click on the Xcode project. We'll just go ahead and add that. So now we got that working. And then also what we need to do is we need to have this in our embedded binaries. So we just go ahead and, I don't know if you saw that. So this is the external access. We click drag, as you can see, this is external access project, and we just embed in binaries. If it will work for me, we'll see. Doesn't look like it wants to work for me. Okay, so I'm just going to grab it from right here instead. Oh, I'm trying to grab the actual project. You have to actually grab the framework. I'm sorry. So you have to go down here, external access, or not external access, the products, and we're going to actually grab the framework. That makes sense. There we go. So now it's embedded in our binaries. We can build, see if everything is working as expected. And it is. So now we could move forward. Go ahead and close well, we could keep this open because we're probably going to need to change a few things around. But now we have external access. Now, as you probably know, like I said, this is why you need to know how know a little bit about frameworks and how they work. You actually have to import them when you want to use them. So we're going to go ahead and go back to our ViewController from the Access project. We're going to do import external access, right? And now we should have access to all of our external classes, right, from external access. So now if I want to make an instance of that, all I have to do is let my X open, my external access open, equal external open class, and we'll just initiate that. Now this is going to be the area that I told you about. It should give me an error. Yeah, there it is. And initializer is inaccessible due to internal protocol protection level. Now we kind of know two things from this error. One is that the implied initializer of this class is defaulted to internal, and now we also know that internal is not going to work. So we have to go back to our project, our external access project, and we have to do the initializer. Now we can just do whatever initializer like this, and that should work. Or I don't even know why I did the spaces, I'm just used to it. We could do the init like that, and you might think, well, we're going to put open because it's open, right? But the problem is that open doesn't work on initializers because they're not the standard initializer is not overridable. Where is this error coming from? Okay, hold on, because I need one error to pop up to show you guys that open on inits do not work. Okay, build failed. Maybe it'll tell me why. It doesn't look like it's telling me. It's gonna tell me why. Okay, well the reason is because the initializers cannot be set to open. They have to be at public, which is kind of weird because you know, they can't be like modified, I guess. But they have to be set to public. They can't go any higher than public. So let's go ahead and do that for this one. And since we know that public is the minimum, what we'll do is go ahead and do this to all of them. What the hell? Sorry about the Facebook just popping up on my TV or screen or whatever. Alright, so now we think that public should make things work. Let's go back, test it. Not here. This is what we wanted to do. Alright, so let's go ahead and build this. See if it'll work. It's just giving us the thing saying that is never used. Alright, so now that it's giving me that, maybe if I go back and show you that if we set it to open, it won't work. Let's see. Yeah, it's not going to tell us. It's not going to tell us mainly because, like I said, the screen recordings limiting Xcode's ability to properly show compile errors. But go ahead and test it out on your machine, and you'll see that open will not work on inits. Okay, where am I going? Alright, so now we have this, and now we want my external open to do something, and notice that we don't have do something implicitly even there. And we know that it has a function called do something implicitly right there, but notice that we can't access it. And this one will actually give us an error. Do something implicitly is inaccessible due to internal protection level. So once again, internal's not allowing us to do what we want to do. So we have to mark it with open. You cannot have something that's implicitly implied in a framework and expect it to work outside of that, because internal means that it's working within that module, and this framework is one module. Your project is a different module. open and public allow you to work outside of those modules and let things be accessible. But when you have something as internal or just generally implied, it's not going to work. So that's where you start seeing the difference between implicitly implied, which is this one, and internal access control starting to be restricted. So if you're going to be making a framework, you want to always mark something as public or open, depending on what you want them to do with that. Or else they're not even going to be able to access it in their project. So let's go back to ViewController. So now we know that that's not going to work, but we can do something explicitly, because it's explicitly stating here, it's explicitly stating that it's open, and you also see that public is going to work as well. My external, and then this one's going to be public, is equal to external public class, and my x public dot do something explicitly. We can still access it because it is access to the public. And then once again we can try the my x internal, right? We already have had multiple examples saying that this should not work, but let's just go ahead and try it. Internal class, and you'll notice that that's not going to work. Let my x implicit equal external implicit class. So if we go ahead and build that, we'll notice that it's not going to run, and maybe if we're lucky it'll actually give us the errors that we can read, or maybe not. No, there it goes. All right, so as you can see, use of unresolved identifier, because it doesn't even have any idea that these exist at all. So it's not even saying anything about it being internal or anything. It just doesn't even see them, so it can't even tell you. So we'll just go ahead and comment those out. So now that we know that those do not work. So once again, if you're working with frameworks, make sure that you mark it as open or public, or else the user, whoever's using your framework, will not be able to access them. Private and file private are limited to the actual file, and then if you have something that's private inside of a function or wherever you're using it, you're stating that method is being private, then you will not be able to use it anywhere except for within the scope of wherever you stated that it is private. So those are just some of the things to keep in mind. I still have a few more examples that I want to go through. If this is a lot for you, because it is kind of a lot to take in, and I highly recommend that you go through and do this example by yourself. It will really give you, it'll really open your eyes on what's going on. But there are a few other things that I just want to show you in case all this is making sense and you're ready to move forward. So now we want to distinguish between open and public, right? So we're going to go over here, and let's just do a whole new file, right? And this is just so that we can keep everything clean. We're just going to call this subclassing. This is where you're going to see it, subclassing stuff, right? Whatever you want to call it, because it doesn't really matter. All right. So let's say I want to use my external classes, and we know that these are useless. So let's just go ahead and state that these are useless outside of the framework, right? Userless. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, guys. I'm sorry. Anyway, so now we're going to be subclassing stuff, right? and we want to subclass our external class and public class because we want to just do a couple modifications to them and things like that, right? So let's do let's make a class called sub open, or we'll call it external open, just so that we know what we're dealing with. And we want to do it, oh wait, before I do this I have to import it. Good catch, guys. You guys saw it, but I didn't see it. We want to import our external access class, and now we can subclass this of external open class, right? And now we have now we can actually do things like make modifications in here, right? But we'll get to that right now. Let's do the same thing with public. So sub external public, and we want to subclass external public class, and we'll just do the same exact thing. And you'll notice that there's actually an error right here. Why do we have 3 though? Where are the other ones? Did I not come? See, Xcode is tripping, straight tripping. What the hell? It's trying to modify my comments. The hell are you doing, Xcode? Okay, so as you can see, cannot inherit from non-open class. It's very specific for you guys. Cannot inherit. So if you want to if you want to allow the users of your framework to subclass off of your classes, then you have to mark them as open, because if you mark them as public, they will not allow that. So if I were to go over here, external access, and where is it? So obviously if I were to change this to open, which is not which we're not really supposed to be doing, but whatever, for the sake of the example, we'll get no errors, and as you can see. But if I turn it back to public and we build, you see that we get that same error. Cannot inherit from non-open class. So this is going back to what I was trying to explain before. Wikipedia, you can put that content out there and let others modify it however they see fit. Public, you put that content out there, but they can't ever you know, change your tweets. So that's one way to kind of think about it. So let's go back to our subclassing stuff file, and we'll just comment this out. We'll just say can't subclass public access classes. What the hell am I doing, guys? All right. So now we're at the point to where you kind of see the difference between open and public. If you want to give user full access over everything in your framework and let them, you know, do their own modifications to the code, which is, you know, I highly recommend it, unless it's gonna completely mess up their project. But if it's just subclassing, it shouldn't. But yeah, I highly recommend giving open access to all your stuff, just so that they can modify it as they see fit, unless you know that doing that will actually break something. So now we're at open, and we have this open function, and let's say we want to go back to our subclassing stuff and we want to override our do something class, right? Or we can just do it this way. So do something explicitly, right? So it's going to override it. It's going to override this function, and now we could say print. We can make our modifications and do something else. And we can do that. That's perfectly legitimate. We can do that. Now, this is where you start wanting to use the different access controls within your class to make it more restricted. So now we can set this one to public. And we do a function, do something, do let's do nothing, right? Whatever, it doesn't really matter. I don't know why it took so long for me to think of do nothing. So do nothing. This is a public function, right? Now we will probably get it to pop up. All right, I don't know. Override func do nothing, and we should get the same error that we were getting from right here because you can't override a public function. So method does not override any. See, it doesn't even see it right here. I think I was getting a different error before that was saying the same thing right here, but it pretty much does not see it at all. So yeah, public and below means that your users can't access it, they can't override it when you're doing subclassing and things like that. So just keep those things in mind. One last thing before I let you guys go is that structs, enums, and protocols cannot be set to open, and the reason for that is because you generally don't modify. You're not allowed to inherit from any of those. So if we were to do, let's just do, how would I do this? I guess we could just do it in, we could do it in access, right? We'll just go down a little bit further. Could probably make another document for you guys, but whatever. All right, so structs, struct something, whatever, I don't care, and that's going to be our struct. Next we have a protocol, blah blah, because I'm running out of things to think of, guys, sorry. And then enum of boo hoo, right? So all these are fine, but you can't do open on these guys, and that's because or at least I don't think you can. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because you're not going to be making modifications. Struct is value based, so you can't modify the values, right? Protocols, protocols are essentially blueprints. I mean, you can't modify the blueprints, and then the enums is just a list of things, and you're not going to override the list of things either. You just make another enum, make another protocol, make another struct. You don't override them. So you can't set them to public so that they're accessible in other in your framework, and you can do accessible all the way down to private, I believe. Let's see, I'm getting errors. Yeah, see, so you could do public all the way down to private, because you may want to only use these within the scope of whatever you're doing. Actually, private struct may not make sense. Let's see. I'm still learning too, guys. All right, yeah, so as you can see, for these three, for structs, protocols, and enums, they have to be with the access of public and below, because open just means that you can modify those things, and these are things that you generally can't modify in general. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope that this video was helpful for you. I know that was very long, but I just wanted to go into detail because when you see things like open, public, internal, file private, especially the file private and the private things, they start getting a little bit confusing on what's actually going on, at least for a beginner. And I'm not a beginner, but I just never took the time to really learn this stuff, and I decided to go ahead and take the time to learn it, and I wanted to just pass this information on to you guys. All right, so just so you know, I'm going to be putting this all up into one folder. So let's do Do a new folder. Access. Call this. Can't spell still, guys. Access control. And let me put this in here and external access in here. And what I'll do is I'll actually make this available. This is going to be something I'm going to be doing for all my videos, guys. So if you go on my GitHub, I'm actually going to have all my video, all my everything that I do in my video on my GitHub account, so that you guys can, if you want to clone the repo, pull it down or whatever, you can actually go ahead and do that, and you can have the actual code that I wrote. So let's just call this access control. So public with a readme, sure. Oh goodness, mom, come on. Working with access control and frameworks. Yeah. And this is something that should, I mean, normally I'd go through and commit several times before I do this, but all right. Let me just get this, pop it up in here. I'm gonna change directory to desktop and access control. Gonna knit it, git remote add origin here, git remotes, just make sure that I have them. Git remote, yep, they're there. Git add, add, hold on, so I have to pull it down first. Git pull origin master. And I speak out loud because I don't know why I speak out loud. I speak out loud because it helps me think through the process. So git pull origin. Wait, did I already pull it? Yeah, I think I just pulled it, right? Status. Yeah, I just pulled it. So git add all, git commit my code from access control, git push origin master. I don't know why it's like this. I shouldn't have to enter it in every time. Gotta change that. All right, it's there. Let me make sure it's there for you guys. Yeah, it's all here. So now you have access and external access. All right, guys, so that's all. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at kilo_loco. You can also reach out to me on my website here at kiloloco.com. I have a bad internet connection right now. And this will also be where you can reach me. You can reach me on Twitter, whatever. So yeah, I hope this was a very informative video. And if you have any videos that you would like me to, or anything to be explained, and like me to do a video on it, just let me know, and I will do that. All right, thanks guys. Have a great day.